Thank you. I feel like I've been in Memphis for about 6 months. I have been to Graceland. I've had the greatest ribs in America, and the energy here this morning is amazing. I share that DVD for one reason. It links my life philosophy together. It's an example of living a dream and fighting to live, and a philosophy that helped me accomplish both. Now, how I came up with Find a Way philosophy actually stems all the way back to when I was just a kid. You know, last night we had an opportunity to speak to some of the executives. One of those executives brought their 10-year-old son. And I couldn't help but reflect when I was 10 years old what my vision was, what my passion was, what my love was. I wanted to play in the NFL. And I told everybody about wanting to play in the National Football League. The feedback I got is what would inspire me. I'd get, man, Merril, you don't want to do that. You know how hard that is? You know what the odds are that you'll make it? The odds are against you. And it's impossible. I knew impossible wasn't correct because I've been watching them on television for a long time, so somebody's doing it. Was it going to be difficult? Sure it was. When I was 12 years old, I was finally getting my own room. I wanted one thing in this room. I wanted a wall made of cork. 2 reasons for that. One, I wanted to put my goals up. So I was going to be adjusting things. I was going to be putting pins in the wall. And 2, I didn't want that to be sheetrock because my life would probably end before I got to 13 if my dad saw a bunch of holes in a sheetrock wall. So I was going to accomplish 2 things with this. When I walked into that room my very first time, my bed was bumped up against that cork wall. You can guess what I put at the very top. I will play in the National Football League. As I pinned it up, I couldn't help but revisit all the things that had been told to me as a kid. How hard it was going to be. Very true. The odds were going to be against me. Very true. 0.01% of high school football players ever play in the National Football League. So they were right. The odds were going to be significantly against me. And I've already addressed the impossibility. They'd been doing it, so it wasn't impossible. But as I sat there and looked at that goal, it just struck me. I was like, well, you know what? I'm about to find a way. I'm about to find a way to make it there. So I jumped down, I will play in the National Football League down an 8x10 card, and I wrote, find a way, and put it at the top. And that would stay there for as long as I was in that bedroom, and every goal would follow under it. Now here's what it did. It inspired action. Now I didn't know what it was going to take to play in the NFL, but the action alone forced me to discover things that would require to play in the NFL. And that discovery, I would learn so many things. I immediately went to the library, and what I was going to study was and find out, what do you train like? You know, what do professional athletes do? What do they eat? How do they work out? I would stumble across a quote that would really set the foundation for this journey. It was by Aristotle. And the quote is, we are what we repeatedly do. Then excellence is not an act but a habit. I read it again, and if you think about it, we are what we repeatedly do. Then excellence is not an act but a habit. And I thought, that's it, you know. It's going to have to take tremendous habits for me to accomplish that goal. One other thing I thought, somebody's doing it, it's already there, that has established a philosophy and habits that is required to be great. Ironically, my favorite football player was Walter Payton, who was the greatest running back ever to put on a pair of shoulder pads, maybe the greatest player to ever don a pair of pads, in my eyes. So I wanted to learn everything about Walter Payton. What makes him so great? What does he do that makes him so great? He's already there. And maybe I can inherit some of the things that he does. Well, he was putting out a VHS. I sometimes will mess up and say DVD, but they were making DVDs back then. A VHS, and it was going to talk about his family, his training, the charity work that he did, and I wanted to get this tape because I thought this tape could be the link to help me in my quest. Well, as I got this tape and I plugged it in, there was one thing that he said in this 60-minute tape that would stick with me and inspire me still to this day. Now, this is after shortly after he became the all-time leading rusher. And he was asked, what makes you better than everybody else? Now, for that moment in time, I'm like, okay, here's your moment of truth. It may be some genetic link that he is going to share with us that I can forget about. Or maybe it's that product, that protein drink that I'm going to go buy at GNC, and I'll consume all that. But he said something very powerful. He said, I want it more than they do, every day of the week. You just see Sunday. He didn't talk about being bigger, stronger, or faster. He talked about a mindset. He talked about an approach that he has when he trains, when he practices, and then when he plays. I'm like, well, I can do that. So when I practiced, I wanted it more than anybody else. When I trained, I wanted it more than anybody else. And when I played, I wanted it more than anybody else. Now, to prove to you that is not just some lip service, and actually this is very powerful to me, quite honestly. I'm going to fast forward 15 years later. I'm in Chicago. I'm sitting on a training table that he probably sat on when he got taped, getting taped by the exact same trainer that used to tape him. And one of my rules, I want a Walter Payton story every day. And I know that Fred Cato got tired of telling these stories, and the players started getting used to me hearing these stories and demanding these stories. That one day when I was sitting there, my teammate next to me, he goes, I got a story for you. Fred, I'll tell you a story about Walter Payton. Because I was just like you. I loved Walter Payton. I wanted to be like Walter Payton. I read his books. I saw his tapes. I wanted to be like him. And when I got drafted, the first person that I wanted to meet was Walter Payton. And the second thing I wanted to do, I wanted to train with Walter Payton. He used to run this dirt hills about 80 yards straight up the hill at about a 20-30% grade. If you've ever walked up a hill like that, you probably have a physical reality of how steep that is. But he would train it. He had a unique way of training. Well, when Maurice Douglas, this teammate of mine, got to Chicago, he met Walter, asked Walter if he could train. And Walter's like, absolutely. The day they had set up for him to train, Maurice Douglas there half hour early. He said, I got there early, I was stretched, ready. Here comes Peyton pulling up in his red Ferrari. Gets out, he's got his bruised sweatbands, headband on, sweats on. They called him Sweetness, that was his nickname, for the moves that he made, but he always looked sweet. So he gets out of the car, they warmed up a little bit, and this is Maurice Douglas's words. He's like, we went straight up that hill. He goes, we went to the top of that hill. He goes, and then reality set in. He goes, my heart was ripping out of my chest. He goes, I couldn't think straight. He goes, and our rest period was the walk down, but I had failed to ask how many we going to run. So he's like, when I got my breath about halfway down, I was like, well, how many are we going to run? He's like, we're going to run 10. Not the number Maurice was hoping for. As they walked the bottom of the hill, they started back up that hill. Maurice Douglas goes, I got halfway there, stopped, turned around, walked down, puked, got in my car, and went home. But here's what he said. It was very profound. He said, you know what the difference between Peyton and me is? He wants it more than I do. He wants it more than I do. Maurice Douglas, 5'10", 205 pounds. Very good player. Wasn't a Hall of Famer. Did he maximize his God-given abilities? Probably not. Walter Payton did that by the mindset that he created. Now, I was able to go from 12 years old, putting that find a way up there to play in the National Football League, to discovering things from Aristotle, learning things from Walter Payton. And I believe that was enough to help me become successful in the National Football League. I was fortunately drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, as mentioned in the 10th round. I made that team. In our first week of practice, I would have another piece of the ingredients to this philosophy of mine that would help me become an impact player in the NFL. One of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest, to ever walk the sidelines was Chuck Noll. He was a tremendous teacher. We've already heard a little bit about leadership. He was a great teacher. And I think to be a leader, you have to be a teacher. And you have to be consistent. And he was all of those things. Now, we're getting ready for opening day. We're playing the San Francisco 49ers. They got Joe Montana. I believe they've already won a couple Super Bowls. They're expected to win it again. And they're coming into Pittsburgh. We're at Friday at practice. We're coming together for the last part of practice, which is a team portion, where we all get together, we run plays. Quarterback gets in the huddle, we call it a pass play. My responsibility, if that outside linebacker comes, I'm going to block him. If he drops into coverage, I run a flat route. If the quarterback's smart, he throws it to me and we score a touchdown. Quarterback takes the snap, drops back, throws to the other side of the field. My linebacker drop, I run a flat route. Whistle blows right in the middle of the play. Merril, what are you doing? I've only been there 5 weeks, but I've been there long enough to know Chuck never stops a play and asks you what you're doing if you're doing something right. Immediately, I was thinking, oh man, I bet you my linebacker delayed blitz, that's not good. But he was not, he was in coverage. I'd run the right route. Now this happened within a quick second, mind you. I was doing nothing though, so I responded, nothing. He said, that's the problem. I did not keep you on this football team to be a common football player. I can get anybody out of the stands to check an outside linebacker, run a flat route, and do nothing. What I need you to be is uncommon. Your wide receiver partner over there, how do you know he's not going to fumble? How do you know he's not going to break a tackle and you can make a key block for him to score a touchdown? Man, I do not need common football players. I need uncommon football players. And he went into this dissertation. As embarrassed as I was, I finished practice, and ironically, I go back into the locker room. Whose old locker do you think I had but Franco Harris's? I could not stop thinking about the Immaculate Reception. Those who are football fans, anybody know about the Immaculate Reception? Raise your hand. I try to get a gauge to this because some people who don't know about the Immaculate Reception, it's just a really quick synopsis. It's one of the greatest plays in playoff history. Terry Bradshaw, the Steelers behind 3-0. A few seconds left in a playoff game against the Oakland Raiders. Terry Bradshaw throws the ball down the middle of the field. It hits Frenchie Fuqua, Jack Tatum. Still to this day, nobody really knows. The ball bounces in the air, and Franco Harris snaps it out of the air and scores a touchdown. Franco Harris had no business being where that ball ended up, if he was a common football player. But he was trained to be uncommon, and he was going to the ball. I firmly believe the Immaculate Reception never happens had he not been trained by Chuck Noll. Now, what was most important about that, Chuck Noll wasn't talking to me about being bigger, stronger, or faster again. He was talking to me about a mindset. A mindset that I need to create and a habit that I need to create to be a great football player. And so I took that little ingredient, and that's how I played. I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of things you would never see on the Sports Center, but little things that made a huge difference that my coaches saw because I was uncommon as a player. But I was taught by Chuck Noll. Now I'm going to bring this all together when I'm now in Chicago. We're at the end of training camp, and our second practice of the day, we always do conditioning. And we'll do a variety of conditioning drills that simulate the game of football. Football is an explode recovery sport. It's not a marathon. It's not a distance run. So we do explosive things. On this particular day, we chose to do a series of 40-yard sprints. About halfway through these 40-yard sprints, our position coach stopped us, points to Johnny, says, Johnny. Now, Johnny was a rookie. He was about 6'1", 210 pounds. How fast do you run the 40? And Johnny's like, oh, coach, I run a 4.240. Let me tell you a little bit about a 4.240. Very few people run it, and you can be as dumb as a box of rocks, and you got a shot to play in the NFL because you have speed. That's how much they love speed. So really, John, you run a 4.2. He's like, yes, sir. And the rest of us are buckled over, breathing hard, and Johnny's got his shoulders out. I'd be proud, too. If I ran a 4.2, I'd say 4.2. What else you want to know? Merril, what do you run the 40 in? Not funny. I'm thinking, this ain't funny. I got it, you know, young guy, fast guy, 4.240, old guy, 30, trying to put the writing on the wall. Didn't answer him. I'm not going to answer him. I go, I've worked hard enough and played long enough in this league. I'm entitled. I don't have to answer that question. And this is what I'm thinking. He's like, well, how many games have you played in this league? I was like, about 120. Really? You ever missed a game? No. Now I was getting into my wheelhouse, feeling better about myself. Well, tell me this. What's the fastest you ever ran a 40? I was like, well, okay, now I'm going to back up here. But the Green Bay Packers came in. They worked me out. I ran a 4.58. And I was really like a 4.65, 4.68 guy. But that 4.58 was once run, okay? So I can use that. And I used it. I said a 4.58. But let me keep this in perspective. A 4.58 is not a 4.2. Still not a 4. As good as it may sound, still not a 4.2. He said, all right. Johnny, explain me something. Every time we do this conditioning drill, how come he beats you? Well, then my chest went out. But I flashed all the way back to when I was 12 years old, and I put Find a Way up there. And I think about Aristotle and Chuck Noll and Walter Payton. Had I not learned those things and implemented those things, would I have been like that? It became part of me. I wanted it more than Johnny when we conditioned, and my coach knew that. That's what separated me from a guy who ran a 4.2. But then he said that the most powerful thing that resonates with every player, Johnny, next week when we cut you, I want you to know why. In your terms, those moans and groans, I think you identify with that, to be like, when I fire you, I want you to know why. Those things were powerful, and they were inside the white lines of a football field. Do they apply to life? Absolutely. February 14, 2003, I would field a call confirming what I had feared for a week. I had cancer. Now, I will tell you this, very much like standing on that bed, putting up I will play in the National Football League initially, my boundaries were very narrow. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know how I was going to do it. Didn't think I could. Until the discovery of so many things from Aristotle, Chuck Noll, and Walter Payton. But one thing that I do love more than playing in the National Football League, working at ESPN right now, I love being a dad. Now, there's certain things I think are staples in being a parent. Love and patience are one of those. But my Find a Way philosophy has been a great parenting tool for me. I utilize that with my kids. I embrace them and engage them in their thought process and goals they want to accomplish or obstacles that they're facing. I make them part of the planning and strategy. And it's helped me with them. I've used it a lot on them. I make them take ownership of stuff. But I guide them with it. And then another philosophy that I use, I measure my children in the yardsticks of their years, not mine. And those have been great things for me to be a parent. Now, with all of that said, there's one thing that's consistent, is that you must communicate. You must talk, and you must share things. And I have a great open line of communication with my children. So the first people that I really wanted to share it with, in an elementary kind of way, because my daughter was 9, my son was 7 at the time, is that things were going to be different. My doctor had basically explained it like this. The chemotherapy is like this. We're going to run you over with a Mack truck, let you recover, and we'll run you over again, and again, and again. Shave your head, because you're going bald. You're going to be sick. You're going to lose a lot of weight, and I can't promise you it's going to work. Now, as I went down the stairs, I'm thinking, how do I put all this together for a 9 and a 7-year-old? I did it as elementary as I could possibly do it. Now, my 9-year-old daughter sensed that it was not like, a little more serious than I was leading on to. She runs across the room, jumped in my lap, and threw her arms around my neck, and whispered in my ear, well, Dad, you're going to have to find a way. I never imagined having that reversed on me. But inspired, I've been inspired. That was the greatest inspiration I could possibly have. My boundaries coming down those stairs were here. They were here now. Dying, not an option. Being sick, not an option. Going bald, still going to be an option. I was going bald. But those other two things were not going to happen. Now, just like playing in the National Football League, didn't have a plan. I didn't know how to do it, but it inspired action for me. So I talked to every patient that I could find that had to go through the same thing I went through. Great feedback, not great feedback. The best feedback I got is that they were all still alive. That's what I left inspired, because most people I talked to said, basically I couldn't, the one guy that I talked to said, I couldn't even take the garbage out at week 4. I was so sick. So the ultimate outcome that I had put together was based on this information. But I focused on that they were still alive. Now, although I felt that what I was about to go up against, I had it mapped out, I had a plan, I formulated and discovered the things I needed to, but I would discover my greatest challenge in my first treatment. As I got down and got ready to do my first treatment, it takes about 8 hours. And about halfway through this treatment, the nurse changed her clothes. They have these little blue, powder blue outfits. They look cute, they look soft, they look warm. Well, she had a hazmat suit on. And she walks with a syringe that was about this big, and it was full of red. They call it Red Death. And as she walked in, she let me know of the seriousness of this particular chemical and how powerful it was. Now, I'd been there for about 4 hours. I'd taken a lot of ice, a lot of water, and a lot of fluids. I had to go to the bathroom when it was over. So as they started to undo me so that I could go, she said, now listen, I just want to give you one piece of caution. When you go to the bathroom, I want you to flush twice. Slightly embarrassed by that comment. I was like, well, why would I want to do that? She's like, because what I've just put in you will go in at 100% potency. It's going to immediately come out of you, and it will be at 80% potency. And when it splashes up on the porcelain, it'll eat it if you don't flush. Exactly. That is what's being put into my body. Now, my battle completely changed what I was up against. But I can tell you this. By the inspiration of a 9-year-old, I formulated a plan, and I found out how to handle chemotherapy to the point that I didn't gain a pound and I didn't lose a pound. I did lose my hair, but I was only sick one day in a year span, based on my mindset that I had created, the plan that I had helped execute. So the Find a Way philosophy does work outside the white lines. It works in real life. It works in business. It works in parents. As I sit and look across this room, there is a common thread that we all share. We're all different in a lot of ways, but there's one common thread. Our mental and spiritual strength is untapped, regardless of where you stand right now, and regardless of how hard you may work at it. The beauty about it is endless. Those powers are amazing, and everyone here possesses them. You've already exercised it at some level anyway to be where you are, but they're endless. And may, as you go from here to your life, whether it is in business or in personal life, with goals or obstacles that you face or you strive to overcome, may you use that philosophy and may it help you find your way. And may your life be blessed with success and peace. Thank you.